onto that as well, trying to make a whole conversation. What our theme is for today, and I'm just going to quickly introduce a couple of points about this, and then I'm going to welcome in our super exciting panel. But we thought for our theme today, reaching out and engaging with customers, stakeholders, partners, all of those people from this lockdown environment. So now for me to think about how to do that, the first thing I think about when I'm wanting to respond is what's different? What do we actually need to cope with? And I've divided that up into in your world and also your partners or your customers' world. So in our world, what is different? Well, obviously we're not doing in-person meetings. Maybe it was important to you to do trade shows or conferences. Your customers may be distracted a little. What are their problems we'll come to? Maybe your sales are down. Maybe they're up. Logistical problems. And I think there's a whole swathe of practical issues that a lot of people are having to cope with. Can't get into the lab, can't get into the office. I was asked for a bank statement yesterday and I'm like, I know exactly where it is in my office, but I don't have that particular one in electronic form. Annoying, right? Little things like that. How are you going with your team? Your world may be different in non-business ways as well. And I do want to acknowledge that you may have children to homeschool or family members to look after or all sorts of other non-school and non-work pressures. And I think we need to, that's your starting point. It'll be completely different for all of the 40 people on this call, all the people. So think about your world and that's your starting point. We have to be realistic about where we're at. But if we want to engage with our customers and partners, we should think about their world as well. What are they? And I think it's worthwhile just starting with their feelings, not their business. How do they feel? Maybe they're distracted. Maybe they're frantic. Maybe they're excited. Some people's businesses are really prospering in this environment. And online sales in general are up, and there's areas that are actually really thriving. So when you think about your partners or business, your key business relationships, your best recurring customers, how are they feeling? What's going on in their world? And this, I'm just asking the question. You should be thinking, those people who I need to build relationships with, keep relationships with, what's going on in their world? What do they need? And is there some way you can make their life better? Right? That's what I want you to think. And that's, the more we can think about and understand their world, the more we'll be able to think creatively about what we can do. So my third and last slide on this is I want you to start thinking, what can you do to look after, to maintain relationships with customers, with business partners, with logistics suppliers, whoever it might be. I want to encourage you to reach out. I want you to search for value you can add so that people are glad to hear from you. I think that you might need to be creative about that. And my one tip, it's not going to be a surprise to many people who know me, there's no harm asking people, what do you need? What's your problem? And think about what you could do. And the last tip I just want to put in there is do be realistic about what you plan for yourself. If you're flat out, if you're smashed, if you're got a million family difficulties, challenges, people to look after, be realistic about what capacity you do have. What capacity you do have. So that's my quick intro. I just wanted to get people thinking about this idea of engaging customers and partners. And we're now going to bring in a really awesome panel. Michelle Melbourne, co-founder of IntelliDocs, on a bunch of boards, She's one of our best and
Craig, you just landed on mute. There we go.
Don't know how I did that. Sorry, everybody. I was just introducing Michelle Melbourne. I don't know if people heard that. And I'll bring her on
how
in a
fabulous
second.
I was.
I was saying that. And my second guest is Duncan Amos, founder of Red Robot and recent addition to the Canberra Innovation Network team. He's our SME Director. I'm going to get them to, really giving you some great insights. So let me get rid of my stupid screen so you can see these people. Shelley, what do you want to say to further introduce yourself and start this conversation about looking after your business partners?
Thanks, Craig. And hi, everybody. It's fantastic to be here. There's so many people on this call. It's great stuff. Craig, none of us actually heard your introduction of me. You went, and Shelley is whatever.
Sorry.
It was very, the lip reading was good. But just as an overview, I know many of you, but for those who don't know me, my world is in enterprise software. I've spent the last 25 years building one of Australia's most successful customer communication enterprise software platforms. You may know it as IntelliDocs. We were fortunate enough to sell about 2 years ago to the tier 1 vendor globally in our space. So this topic, when Craig suggested we talk about it, is very exciting for me, because we actually built a piece of software that enabled our customers, who were banks and insurance companies, to better interact with and communicate with and provide a better customer experience for their clients. So this is something that, we could run a masterclass in this, Craig, I think, if there's demand.
Well, let's start that and we can then follow it up later. Awesome.
Yeah. It's good to be here. Happy. I've got some things to say. So when you're ready for me to say it, I'll say it.
Shelley, why don't you put out a couple of thoughts to start the conversation?
Well, look, I think that firstly, let me acknowledge the diversity of the businesses that are on this call. There are one-person founder companies who are pre-revenue, possibly even pre-client, but presumably they have a vision for servicing their clients, whether they have a small handful of clients, whether they have 1, 10 or 100 or 1,000. I acknowledge you, and hopefully the things that I am going to say will be useful, and you have to give it context, like Craig said. And I also acknowledge that, I'd like you all to think about the fact that recessions and hard times or change is actually the catalyst for great things to happen in terms of a business revolution or things that you need to get done, right? We've been talking about moving to digital platforms and digital channels for 25 years, guys, not just the last 2 or 3 years. And nothing better than unfortunately, a very difficult situation in the economy and in the community for people to be forced to go digital, for them to actually implement that customer relationship management system that you've meant to do forever. Now is the time to reflect on how you can do better, how you can be better, because past hard times show clear evidence that customer-focused companies outperform their competitors every time, right? So, to survive in this crisis, and not just now, but in the aftermath, I've got some tips and tricks for you that might help position your business for the future.
So I think we can all agree that that's super important, and we're going to try and delve into some really, I hope, actionable tips and tricks that people will find. And I'm going to ask everyone on the call to be thinking of questions and continue the conversation, so it's not just us talking to you. But first, let's quickly introduce Duncan Amos. I did start to say, while I stupidly was muted, Duncan is, like Shelley, a founder of a business. His business is, well, he's done a number of businesses over the years, most recently Red Robot, but most recently he's joined the Canberra Innovation Network team as the SME Director, and we're super excited to have him. Duncan, how do you want to introduce the topic from your angle?
No, it's nice to see so many faces here and so many different diverse businesses. It really is quite exciting. I was sort of kind of humbled by Craig and the team at Sebring to sort of say a few things, especially in the presence of Shelley, because she really is quite amazing at what she has achieved in her life and continues to do so. So hopefully I'll be able to give you a little bit of perspective on what it's like to actually be in a product-based environment where you can, you know, in a time like this, can be quite a dreadful position to find yourself in if you're not prepared to do some rather unique things to be able to get around this problem, because it is an issue, and you have to admit that it's an issue. And burying your head in the sand is not going to solve anything at all. So I do applaud you all for joining us, and hopefully we'll give you a couple of cracking ideas. That might just give you one or two ideas. I know there was a Canberra Innovation Network meeting that I went to once when we still could go to meetings, if you remember those. And at that meeting, I got one really cracking idea that got me thinking in a very different way and got us into a whole new market. So just being around other people can give you some good ideas or start you thinking and making you feel like you're part of a community. So I'm very grateful that you would take the time out of your very busy schedules, because I'm sure you're all very busy on your businesses, and hopefully we'll be able to give you some cracking ideas.
Yeah, awesome. Shelley, what's your number one tip to engage customers?
Are you ready? Here I come. Here I come. I have props. For those of you who know me, you expect these. So guys, I've tried to keep it brief. My top 5 tips, and I'll unpack them, but I just want to show you. What's the first one? So be obsessed by your customer. Number 2, do it better. However you're doing it currently, do it better. Number 3, I'm not sure if this acronym is familiar to well, some of you will know what I mean. KYC. It's an
your customer.
It's an important acronym for you to know. Know your customer. KYC. Number 4, use data. I'm going to unpack these. And number 5, be tribal. That one's a bit of fun. So if you want, let's unpack these quickly, right? Like I said, we could run a masterclass in each one of these, right? So the first one is to be obsessed by your customer. Number 1, have you got someone who's in charge of this in your company? Even if you are the founder, have you put yourself in charge of your obsession with your customer? Do you have this written all over your walls, all over your virtual walls? Who are my customers? Do I walk in their shoes every day? And you know what? Don't call it customer service. Call it customer success. Have a look at what some of the big companies do in your space. Who are the leaders and what are they doing in terms of customer engagement? What are they striving to achieve? Have you set targets? Have you set goals? Have you actually defined what you want to achieve in your customer success strategy? Do you celebrate your customers? Do you have awards that you give to your customers? So your obsession needs to be palatable. It needs to be seen. It needs to be visible. It needs to be measured. And importantly, if you have staff, your culture is important internally, that you are customer obsessed. If I can tell you a little story, and those of you who are into software might relate to this. If you've got the engineers running the customer success team, it might not work. So you actually need to make sure that you've got customer-focused people. Some of your technical people will be very obsessed by the customer, but they might be more obsessed about the product that they're building or the technology or the code that they're writing, and they might forget to actually think about the customer. And you have to promise me not to ever tell anybody this. This is Chatham House rules, right? In the early days of IntelliDocs, if somebody rang up and complained or asked a question about our technology, you kind of put them on hold and in our open plan office, you'd say, oh my God, guys, we've got an ID 10T problem. Do you want to have a think about what that is? Does anybody know what that is? Let me write it down for you. Can you all read that?
Yeah, I think so. I can. We used to say problem exists between keyboard and chair.
So if you write down ID 10T as in a code, it'd be like, you know, here's an idiot, right? Now, shame on us. And we learnt that is not cool, but that is what engineering types or technology types tend to do. They're protective of their kit, protective of their code. And if, God forbid, a customer rang up and went, I can't use it, I'm a bit stupid, we didn't give them as much love as they should have done. So be better at that. You know, do you recognize those customers for their engagement and being engaged? Get that on your radar. Make sure that you have an internal culture of support and help for your customers. So the second point is to do it better, right? So whatever process you've got, something that you can do today to get immediate improvement or immediate results is just sit down and have a think about what you could do better today. Do you actually have customer success as an option on your website? Like, is it something that a customer can go and pick from on your drop-down list on your website? Maybe a show of hands. Who has customer feedback or customer success or something to do with customers as a menu option on their website? Quick show of hands. Well,
okay, come on.
Maybe I should be asking who doesn't, because there's a really easy thing for you to improve on today.
Talk to us.
Customer success. Add it to your website. It's easy. And even if you've got placeholder content there, it's something to start with, and you can build it. Start with defining your values, who you are, what you stand for, and what you want your customers to achieve. Not about your product or your software or your widget or your service. Stop thinking about you, think about them, think about what you want the outcome for the customer to be, and articulate that to them.
And Manjula said, do you mean testimonials? I think testimonials are good, but that's not exactly what you mean.
Look, like I said, this could be a masterclass, right? So it means many, 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 many things. It can mean a CRM. It could mean access to a customer portal. It could mean access to case studies. It could mean access to thought leadership information. It could mean access to your community. It could mean access to anything. But my point is, whatever you've got, do a current state analysis and think of the one thing that you could do better today and get it done. There are so many things that you could do, right? You know, do you need to undertake some training, some customer experience training? Have you, as a founder or as a leader in your organization, are you actually well equipped to do this kind of stuff? Are you reading about customer success techniques such as design thinking, such as sentiment analysis, such as behavioral science, right? So make sure you know what you're doing, and make sure you're looking up and looking out at what other people are doing, perhaps in your industry or in other industries, to take inspiration. My point is, in lockdown, allocate some time to think about what your current state is and make it one step better. It could be as simple or as complex as you need it to be. So,
Shelley,
look,
can I just sort of edge in? Yeah,
I'm going to stop and go, and you can come back for number 3. But let me finish on number 2 and say, customer service, it's a combination of soft skills that are often the hardest to master. And particularly when you come from a technical or a product expertise field, you might forget about the importance of communication and collaboration and empathy and creativity and adaptability, because they're not typically technical skills, are they? But they're increasingly vital for your modern business. Craig?
Oh, totally. And all I wanted to do there, Shelley, is get everyone really stop and think in our audience. Shelley's just challenged you. Is there one thing you could do better? And I hope that you all can think of one thing you could do better, one thing you could do better. And, you know, the way to get 100 times better is to get 1 times better 100 times. One improvement. So, and I want people to be thinking about things that could be better, and bring them into the conversation and put it on the chat if you, well, what about, or does this make sense? And let's try and make that interactive. I do want to bring Duncan into the conversation as well. What do you want to add to that, Duncan?
Well, I'm always enamored with Shelley's ideas, and I do love her things. I should remember from all the ones I've done with Shelley in the past, I should have my own hold up, but I'll try and I'm going to keep mine simple and keep it like just 3 things that I think, because it can be quite a lot. I was always reminded of, I was fortunate enough to spend a bit of time in South Africa with one of my businesses. And while I was there was a journalist who interviewed Nelson Mandela. This was a while ago, obviously. He asked Nelson Mandela what it was about leadership that made him so great. And he said there were 2 things that he remembers from his father. His father used to take him into, some of you might have heard the story, it's quite common. His father used to take him to these tribal councils. They'd always used to sit in a circle. That was the first thing he remembered. And the second thing was that his father was always the last to speak. And when he asked his father why that was the case, he said it was because I always like to listen before I tell others what they need to know or hear. And I always thought about that in terms of business, and realized that it's very often we get into the market and we dictate to our customers what they think they need. And we don't stop and actually think about it. And we don't stop and listen to them and ask them some very pertinent questions that can help us guide the offering that we may or may have at that time. And so I would challenge you at this particular time to probably stop and ask some really clear questions, and go back to some of your more loyal customers. Because the other second point that I wanted to make is that sometimes you can get very stale relationships. Often companies spend millions and millions of dollars on developing, or even hundreds of dollars, whatever your cost factor might be, to gain new customers, and forget about their old customers. And that can be a very expensive mistake if you're not really taking a bit of time to have a look at it, because your old customer, and the other thing about your old customers is, how stale is your relationship with your old customers? I mean, it's like a human relationship, a personal relationship. And I'm reminded recently when I came back, I'm actually locked in Queensland at the moment. Shame for me. I know I hear all of you groaning, but someone has to do it, and I'm prepared to do it for all of you. So, but as I'm locked in Queensland, I caught up with one of my nephews, and I hadn't seen him for 2 years. And I immediately regressed back to how I was treating him as a young man, and realized, and we had an interesting conversation, like an in-depth sort of heartfelt conversation, where he said, you're no longer the person I thought I was, and I'm not interested in you anymore. And it was quite heartbreaking. But after a long conversation with him, I realized that all I was doing was regressing back to the original relationship that I had with him, and I wasn't moving the relationship forward. So I made a categorical decision to change the way I was reacting with him. And now my relationship with him is really strong. And I would ask you, is some of your relationships with some of your current customers stale, and can you reignite them? Is there something you could do where you could just call them up and say, hey, we used to do this together, and just have a good look at that relationship and see how that can be refreshed? Because lots of business comes out of referrals, reconnections. They may have moved on. They may give you some excellent ideas that might help you overcome some of the more challenging things that you have at the moment. But that's another thing I would challenge you to do, is just have a listen, ask some seriously good questions. And the third thing is, don't be bogged down by making it too complicated. Sometimes we spend most of our life worrying about 1,000 things. We don't actually ever get up and do anything. And so, as Shelley said, just do something, whatever that is. It will make you feel better about yourself, and it will move your business in a forward direction. Momentum begins with 1 foot. And all of us in business experience some pretty horrid times, but we also experience the amazing times. And it always starts with that one step forward. So I don't know, there's 3 quick tips that I thought might just help you out. I certainly can, if anyone wants to, we can go through how to actually go and get customers, and I can certainly go through some ideas that you can do on refreshing your networks or your websites. But I don't know, some thoughts?
So anyone got any questions about any of what Shelley and Duncan were talking about? Throw them in so we can clarify and really engage with you. Shelley, that one thing you can do better, asking, what does that mean to you?
Well, I think, I use the term current state analysis, right? That's kind of consultant speak for what are you doing today? And how does that align with your actual business strategy or your ambition? So are you looking after your customers? Do you actually have a process? Do you want to have a process? Do you need to have a process? Are you using spreadsheets when you should be using a plug-in CRM? I mean, this is kind of getting into my next tips, but, KYC, right? Do you know your customer? So many of us are so busy trying to keep our heads above water and, trying to chase that revenue that we lose the handle of who is our customer, because we want every single customer we can possibly get. But is that actually healthy, and is that actually the right strategy for you? Because who actually is your customer? The customers you've got, are they your ideal customers? Are they actually your best customers? Sometimes your customers are not your ideal customers. And so here's my question. Does your value proposition for what you do, or what you supply, what service you have, does that line up with your articulated values, your value proposition, what it is you're offering? Because if you can really get that nicely aligned and articulated, you will build a good customer base that is less problematic than a random higgledy-piggledy everybody you can possibly get customer base. So KYC is really important. And make sure that, exactly like Duncan said, you listen to them, ask them what they like, ask them what they don't like, and listen. Is there friction in the relationship that you have with them? Are you making it harder than it needs to be? For example, you know how I asked you if you have a customer success option on your website or on your socials or however you engage? Do you have the ability to receive complaints? Now, this isn't going to apply to every business, but those of you who have a B2C business, for example, where you're dealing with maybe a higher volume than a B2B business, do you make it actually easy for someone to give you instant feedback? Or are you expecting that they're going to ring your phone number and say, hello, I'm sorry, I'd like to make a complaint? Because you won't get that feedback unless you give them the ability to get to know you.
Oh, awesome. Yeah. Sorry, Shelley.
No, that's all right. And sorry, and tied to that was make sure that you put your best customer success people on the other end of that portal or that chat or that email, so that people aren't going to ring you, right? Only the very, very, very cranky customers are going to ring you, and they're not the customers you want.
Yeah,
right?
So I think one of the things about feedback or getting that line of communication open is start proactively with feedback. And anyone who's done any of our workshops here, for example, knows that they're going to get told about 5 times during the workshop, we're going to send you a feedback, right? And you're going to be sent a feedback, and we're going to read every single one of them. Now, and that's how you start that virtuous circle, the communication loop between you and the customer. And it doesn't matter what sort of customers you have, you need that feedback loop. Of course, depending on your customers will depend what's the right way to do it. Sometimes if you're you might be talking to your customer about your product each and every time. That's just the way you deliver it. Well, make sure ask them. Make sure you ask them for the feedback and find out. If it's okay, I just want to pull out a great question from Liz, who's asked on the chat about how do you get new customers, and especially in this lockdown world, because the lockdown really does change a lot. And I'm really interested in both of your thoughts about how that advice is affected by being in lockdown.
Shelley, do you want to go, or do you want me to go?
You go first, Duncan.
That's a great question, actually, Liz. And that's probably one of the questions that I'd be asking if I was sitting on this council. It's all nice to, or this group, it's all nice to hear lots of philosophies about things, but how do you actually do it? Well, courage is the real first step. You've got to actually start moving in a direction. So make a list. That's the first thing. Make a list. Make a list of all the people you know. Make all the list of all the people you don't know. Make a list of all the people that you know people that you need to know, and then actually start contacting them. And I mean contacting them not like through email, not through LinkedIn. I know a lot of people believe that that's the right way to go, but we are actually in a middle of a pandemic where people need to contact and talk and desire and have passion to actually physically talk to someone on the phone, or physically talk to someone, be it through this medium or whatever medium happens to be. But if you pick up the phone, and I've found this since I've been doing this during the pandemic, is people are very receptive to talking to you. They want to talk to you, and they will give you what you need if you just ask the question. So, sometimes we get a little lazy, and I think it's very lazy. Sometimes we just send out 1 million emails and then we just farm the ones that respond. But, getting on the phone can actually be planting trees as you go. So they may not respond now, but they remember you. And then down the stream, they will probably pick you up. So, and the other one is, and this is something I've learned working with Sebring, is be humble. When you ring someone up, ask them what it is that you can do for them, not what they can do for you. I sound like an American president when I say that, but generally, just what can you do for them? Like, have some empathy. Really do listen to them. Don't try and flog them or something. Actually, be interested in whether you can connect them to someone else. And the final part that I've found working for me really well, which is something that I actually learned out of a group that's on the call today from Hey Fritz, which is now Rosella Street. We did a growth lab with them, and one of the things that came out of it was learn the language of your customers. Actually, how they talk and the words they use, like learn that, and then repeat that back to them in a language that they understand. Because very often you can be talking with your language within the organization that you are, and people have no idea what you're talking about. When I talk to people about SME, you'll be surprised how many people don't know what an SME is, a small to medium enterprise. They do not know. So learn their language, and then you relate to them.
Do you think that your value proposition, you should have a bit of a tweak of that in this pandemic world?
Absolutely. That's a very good point, Liz. It's an excellent point. Definitely. I mean, do you want to elaborate on that a bit more? Because I like that.
Yeah, I'm happy to hear from Liz. Your value proposition has to change if your customers have changed. So how are you going to respond to that? That will be my thing. Liz, what did you want to say?
No, that's all. That's it. Yeah.
You were just asking a question.
Yeah, I was.
It's a great question. And I want everyone to be thinking, what has changed? What's the opportunity? What could I do better or different in this world? What does my customer need that's different in this world? And it, like Shelley said, know your customer, know what's in their world. And when you know that, when you've listened to them, you look for the insights. What do they, what's missing in their world? I do want to call out very quickly a couple of really good comments from the chat as well. Serena, and you've really summarized a couple of these points really nicely. But Serena also said it's very easy to become defensive when you get feedback, and I really want to encourage people not to be defensive. You've got to listen, and you might think you know better, but you've really got to listen and it's hard work, isn't it? To hear feedback that's not necessarily what you wanted to hear. What was the other one? Sorry, I lost it. Shelley, what do you want to add?
wanted to just respond to a question that Liz asked about getting new customers in this lockdown world.
Mm-hmm.
And Liz, I mean, gosh, it's difficult to generically answer that question, right? Because of the diversity of the businesses and the size and shape that everybody's in. But let me just say that I think if I take a middle approach here, is that you should look after the customers you've already got. If you had to focus on that, I mean, I'm assuming you've got, folks have got a few customers, look after the ones you've got. I remember my niece worked at Threadbow for a winter season, and she was always talking about Stuart Diver, who was the leader of the Threadbow customer service experience. And most of us would remember Stuart Diver as a great leader in the community. But he was their customer success manager there at Threadbow, and he told every single person that was working there that if they had to, they needed to jump over the service counter and put those ski boots on for the kids, the customers' kids that were screaming all around them. And if someone complained about the coffee, apologise and give them a voucher for 3 free coffees. And that was the way Threadbow did it. I mean, it's a very generic example, but they went over and above for their customers. They were obsessed by their customer. Now, if you can take just a little bit of inspiration and insight from that to help your customer, whether it's responding to somebody who said they didn't like your coffee and say, give us a chance, we'll be better, or whether it's somebody who's completely harassed and not really coping, you jump over your counter and put the ski boots on for the kids, right? Figure out how you can relate that to your own business. And Craig said something about knowing your customer. My 4th point was the data, right? So learn from what's happened before. Learn why your customer is your customer. So if you can kind of figure that out, that should help you get more customers. If you actually are able to define your ideal customer, know your customer, find out who they are, and then repeat that. Use the intelligence that you can learn from knowing your customer. And I think you can leverage the one you've got to get more.
Yeah, awesome. Just following up on that, and I think it's Sammy asked on the chat, should we be giving more TLC to our customers? And I think you've just answered yes, but she also said, how can we make this a sustainable part of our business process? Because you do have to be careful about the cost and effort involved in such things. So what's your response to that?
Well, I did point out at the very beginning that my experience is in enterprise software. So of course you're going to expect me to say systematize whatever it is that works, right? Now, that doesn't mean it's a robotic process. That doesn't mean that you haven't got heart or empathy or a human approach, because they are the most important things that will differentiate you. But what you can do is well, this is my 5th point, be tribal, right? So be deliberate and proactive about nurturing your customer base. Now, what do I mean by that? When you build your tribe, you kind of just can't have everybody. It can't be willy-nilly. You need to express very clearly and publicly who's in and who's out of your tribe. And then when you know who's in, you can actually categorize and define and figure out what their characteristics are and how you get repeat customers from that tribe and how you get new customers from that tribe. Which customers spend the most money with you? Which customers yield you the highest margins? So this intelligence gathering helps you to be tribal, because obviously what you should be focusing on is your highest value, your highest yield, or your best performing customers, however you need to define that for you, right? And most importantly, there are going to be some customers that you don't want. Think about the fisherman out there in the ocean using the right bait. He doesn't want to just catch any fish. He wants to catch the fish that's going to get him the highest price at the market and be the nicest experience for the customers to eat, right? You don't want the rubbish. So have a think about being deliberate about who your clients are. You need to identify them. And in the old days at IntelliDocs, we used to divide our client base into type A's, type B's, and type C's. Right, so have a think about that. Your type A's are those who are loyal and who fit your tribal values. They are the ones that you should obsess on. You should work hard to promote your type B's to type A's. Now, your type B customers are not necessarily loyal and you don't really know them very well, and they're a bit hard to define and a bit hard to articulate. But your objective should be to know them better and promote them to type A's. And then, of course, there's the type C. These are the complainers. These are the troublemakers. These are the people that don't quite align to your advertised values or your value proposition, and they don't fit with your tribe. So what do you want to do with them? You want to refer them to your competitor, is what you want to do with them. Seriously, you need to be very clear. You need to know that element of your customer base, and you certainly don't want to attract any more of them, and you want to either change them, promote them to type Bs, or you want to get rid of them. And certainly with your type As, you want to tell them they're great. You want to give them something that they weren't expecting. You want to delight them. You give them an onboarding gift or give them some kind of lockdown love. A simple thank you email or some kind of free relevant information that you know they're going to value and be inspired by. And like Duncan said, it can be a simple, humble note to them. But if you've got some kind of systematic approach to it, you're going to have easy access to all of their data. So you can easily send an email or an EDM or some kind of correspondence that's sent to them at the right time. It's written in the right tone. It's personalized, and they're going to receive it with good faith. And you're going to delight them, because when our customers are happy, we're happy. And I think a measure of our success, and it pervades your culture as well for your staff, your team. They're happy when people are happy, and they're not happy when people are complaining. So I love Craig's terminology, the virtuous circle or cycle, virtuous cycle. Was it, Craig?
I don't know.
The virtuous cycle.
I know what I said.
So I think to summarize that is be very deliberate about, well, number one, knowing who your customer is, and number two, attracting and refining the customers that you're going fishing for.
Totally. I just want to call out a really nice comment that Alicia's made on the chat. A mentor told her, and it's just beautiful, when in doubt, be generous. So when you're not sure what to do, go down the generous path and you'll make it work later. I just love that. If it's okay, I'd like to also share two very quick things tactics that I've seen used really well in this lockdown environment that may be relevant to some of you. One is a simple text message, and it's somewhere in between a phone call and an email, and a little text message that a few people have reached out to me and said, how are you going? Or here's a little thing, were you aware of this piece of business support or something like that? They've reached out with a little tidbit, and wow, it's so powerful. You just think to yourself, oh, I'd want to deal with this person more. Super good. The other one, and it could be relevant to some of you, I received a couple of, products, and they had a little handwritten note. Thanks for your loyalty in these tough times, or something like that. And again, it's super powerful. And yes, writing those notes is probably hard work for that business person, but boy, it's so powerful. So I want you to think of little things like that. Sometimes it is relatively little things. Duncan, what do you want to add to this?
Oh, well, I'll tell you a quick story about a couple that when I had our Red Robot, our photo booth company, and they were all excited, and they bought their very first photo booth. They were getting their business ready. They were about to launch, and everything was going well. And then they discovered that one of their children had some rather challenging issues, and as a result, they were unable to pay for the remainder of their bill. And I mean, there would have been a time when we might have been a little bit more strict about that, but we showed a little bit of empathy towards them and cut them some slack, which actually went on for nearly 2.5 years, to be quite frank. And we honestly didn't think we were going to make the money back. But during that time, they still had their product. They traded out of it, and the money that they made literally saved their marriage, and so on and so forth. So it's the little things from time to time that you don't realize what you can do just to contribute in those ways to your customers. And of course, they became great champions of ours and always spoke very highly of us. So, you know, along the way, it is the niceties of life that are really, really good. And then on another note, also be nice to your suppliers. Like, actually be nice to suppliers. It's quite surprising when you start reaching out to your suppliers, how they too will cut you some slack and give you a bit of help and so on. That will make a big difference for you down the road. So I'd say all of that we've talked about, probably just reverse and go the other way a little bit as well. Yeah, so I'd say, yeah, some of those sorts of things might help you a little bit there.
Totally. Now we nearly our hours getting pretty close to up. Anyone in the audience bursting with a question, get it out there. Get it out there, please. If not, Shelley, do you want to just throw in one or two last thoughts?
Other than to say, I agree with what Duncan said very much. And if you combine that with my suggestion of, your type A, type B, type C customers, I know it's very rudimentary, but like I said at the beginning, I want each of you to think about your own customer set, whether they're existing or they're your aspirational customers, whether you've got 1 or 10 or 100 or 1,000 or plus. It's really important to be deliberate about everything that you do. And in tough times, it's even more important. And it actually should give you the opportunity to sit down and take stock. And having honest, genuine, humble, transparent conversations with your customers will pay you back in spades. And that might just be the difference that you need. And it might give you this slingshot into the post-pandemic kind of, whatever 2022 holds for us. But it should, and I would predict that it will and it should distinguish you from your competitors. And I think that's really important. And only you know your business, right? No one knows your business better than you do. And you know your competitors and you know what you're up against. So if you can differentiate based on your approach to customer success, you will win in the market, even if you are more expensive. You will win if your customers feel like that you are engaged and you are listening. And so one thing you can do today is update your website and say that we're engaged and we're listening. And here's how you can talk to us.
We're listening. What a great phrase to have on your website. We're listening. I really like that. I think the flip side of the crisis is, in some ways, we've got a new fresh start. In a crisis, you will win more competitive advantage or lose more, depending on how you go. You take this as an opportunity, even in those tough times. Some of the toughest times I've had in my business career, in hindsight, we won lots of market share because we were, because we were able to, still keep investing in that. It feels like you're going backwards, but actually you might be going forwards. So I think there's, I want to just put that little optimistic point on it there. Duncan, last thoughts? I commend you all for coming on today. It's nice to feel part of a tribe. One of Shelley's talking about, and this is very much a tribe of entrepreneurial people that just really want to get ahead. Yeah, all the A people want to get ahead and make something really good of their business and their idea. So I would just highly recommend that you reach out to the people that are in this group and touch base with each one of them, because
there is I'm flicking through and having a look at some of the clever people that are sitting in here, and there's some people here that really can teach us a few things. So, you know, Harold Dimple's one, and then, I mean, Alia's another, and it goes on and on. Serena, that just goes on and on and on. So I would highly recommend that you reach out to those people and have a chat to them, because I know I've actually got great advice from a lot of the people here myself. And then the other thing is, I know I'm new to Sebring, and it's been a great journey being part of the team, but these guys really do help. They really do. I mean, and I would strongly recommend that you guys, if you want more help with your sales or you want more help with marketing ideas, reach out to us. You know, we're here to help. And yeah, so please do that. Thanks. I'll come to one of our ideas. The other one says, send people you know to come and visit us too. Because a lot of people out there don't even know we exist. How sad.
Alicia's just asked me to hold up my top 5 tips, because
you go.
So
hi, Leah.
Do that again. There you go, Alicia.
Elisa.
Be obsessed, do it better, know your customer, use the data, and be tribal.
And honestly, my favorite there is
That's
be obsessed. Teacher. Be obsessed. And actually they're all really good. And when Shelley said do it better, that turned into a conversation around, there's got to be one thing you could do right now. There's got to be one thing you could do right now to build better relationships with your customers, or to reach customers despite the difficulties of this lockdowns. Something
really simple is to say, thank you for being my customer, or thank you for being our customer. And that goes to a point that Duncan just said about this group here, this community, this tribe is so valuable to each and every one of us. If you think about what you may or may not know about how Silicon Valley formed and how it became successful, is because everybody supported each other. Everybody took the first version of whatever software someone had invented down in the valley, and the 300 people that were in the software user group in Silicon Valley at that time, they proudly downloaded the first version of every inventor's piece of software. They were always the first people to be their early adopters and their first supporters. So let's do that for each other.
Totally. So, and that's really what I want everyone here to be doing, and getting other people to do, is support each other, have a useful conversation. There's so much wisdom amongst all the people here. Support each other. Come along on Wednesday, first Wednesday Connect, 5 p.m, and you'll be able to have chats in slightly smaller groups, which can be a bit more interactive. And that'll be really, trust me, it's awesome. If you haven't been on that platform, it really is good. Next week, and I think Zach's just putting the link on the chat. Next week, we've got another great local entrepreneur, Matt Bullock, founder of eWay, Spinify, and he's going to really challenge you. What can you do about your website and sales optimization and in this environment? And that really will be a bit of a masterclass, or of course only an hour's worth of masterclass, but trust me, he will bring very detailed, actionable and deep insights to your online presence and that whole thing. So please do recommend register for next week, and B, tell your friends. Come along to First Wednesday Connect.
Let me support you there, Craig, and just reiterate that to everybody. And Duncan said it, there are some incredible people in our network, and Matt Bullock is world-class. They don't come better.
Totally. He's just awesome. He's actually, I think one of the words you used, Shelley, is highly appropriate for Matt. He's obsessive about customers. No, he really is. He's obsessive about optimizing it. And I mean that obsessive in a good way, like you meant.
And he knows how to do it.
And he's super skillful as well as obsessive. But the skill partly comes from the obsession, because if you really care about something, you get better at it. At
eWay, a bell would literally ring when they got a new customer signed up.
He really cared about customers. He knew Matt always knows his metrics, and he always knows how he's optimizing them. the last thing I just want to, we call this the Weekly Innovation Challenge. And I know it's only a tiny component, but I really want to challenge everyone on this call to act. I want you to do something. I think probably Shelley or Duncan, I can't remember who mentioned it first, but that idea of there's one thing you can do better. I really want everyone to actually go and do that. Identify the one thing you could do better in terms of supporting your customers, engaging your customers, reaching out to new customers. What is that one thing? And do it. I really, it's not that hard. Do it. Last week, we set you the challenge of identifying a difficulty you were having and reaching out to somebody to get some help with that. I hope a lot of you did that. If you didn't, you still can. Think of something that you could be helped with and reach out to somebody and ask for help. Politely, respectfully, humbly ask for a little bit of help and you'll be amazed what happens. Help each other. Connect maybe at First Wednesday Connect, online here, in any mechanism that you choose that makes sense to you. Get on and do it. So I think that's probably all we needed to cover. Thank all of you for coming here, being part of our community, being active, listening, asking questions. But of course, most importantly, thanks to fantastic guests, Michelle Melbourne and Duncan Amos, sharing their insights from their business experience. Actually, I did forget one really important thank you, which is for the Sebron team and especially Zach, who put a lot of effort into putting this event together and promoting it and telling the story, because it's no good if nobody turns up. Thank everyone. We do like to keep it really, really strictly to 1 hour so that we don't eat too much of your time. Thank you, Shelley. Thank you, Duncan. Thank you, everybody. Any last comments is all welcome.
Over my shoulder here, you can see a beautiful big sailing boat. Let me just leave you with the thought. My signature thought is smooth waters don't make good sailors. Embrace the challenge. What a beautiful thought to end with. Smooth waters don't make good sailors. Embrace the challenge. Thank you very much, Shelley. I'll be talking to you soon, I'm sure. Thanks, everyone.